Hey everybody, John Manuel and Aaron Fitt with you on another Baseball America Google Plus Hangout. I want to personally apologize to everybody who missed the podcast this week. That would be everybody because I fouled up the podcast. Very disappointing. We had a great podcast, Aaron. That joins the long lineup, unfortunately, of podcasts lost in the ether. I don't know what happened to this one. We have 4 minutes of quality podcast, and then the rest of it, she's gone. So we apologize for that. I do want to remind people
Way to
that,
start out with the
first of
Hall and
all,
Oates reference there, John. I think Lee would be happy for the Hall and Oates reference there. She's gone.
I didn't even know that I made that Hall of Notes reference. So that's a Hall of Fame Hall of Notes reference. You don't even make it. When you make it, you don't even realize that you're making it. But podcasts are effeminate. They're she's for sure, like a boat or a car. So, but we do want to remind you that our podcasts are brought to you by Slugger Nation, Louisville Slugger. Also, I want to remind people that our Baseball America draft coverage, if you subscribe now at baseballamerica.com/subscribe, you get an extra month of premium access built in. So basically, it's like the old NBA, 3 to make 2. This is like 13 months for the price of 12 months or whatever you sign up for. You get an extra month of premium content if you sign up in the month of May. Wrapping around our draft coverage. So that's only available by going online to baseballamerica.com/subscribe. Aaron, it's a big college baseball weekend. It's already kicked off last night with a big SEC matchup, Florida and Vanderbilt. Aaron, I had an area scout call college baseball games pillow fights, and that's what last night was kind of like. 5 hits combined in the game between Vanderbilt and Florida. One of them was like a high pop fly that just fell in. Just not a lot of offense in that game, but 10 walks issued by Vanderbilt pitchers, and Florida able to capitalize, scratch out a run. First, is that the biggest series in the SEC this weekend? And second of all, what were your impressions of Vanderbilt's pitchers, Tyler Beede and Adam Ravenel? Obviously, Beede a first-round prospect, and Ravenel is going to get picked somewhere. I believe Clint Longenecker called his body seductive this week at a BA meeting, so he's going to go good, Aaron. How good does Ravenel go? What the heck is up with Tyler Beede?
Well, Ravenel was impressive last night. I liked the look I got there. It was, I think on the TV gun it was up to 97 miles an hour, which I think is legitimate because we know he's got huge arm strength. Arm is fast, and the slider is good. And it was very effective last night. Swing and miss, power slider. So, they're just that to me is the luxury that Vanderbilt has. Is you got so many arms in the bullpen that you can move a guy like Carson Fulmer from that closer role into the rotation, and you don't miss a beat because you got a guy, Brian Miller, who already owns the school record for saves, at least the single season, maybe the career record as well. He's back there, and you got Ravenel.
Was it Navery Moore who used to have the record?
That's right. Navery Moore was the former record holder, but I'm pretty sure Miller broke that last year. You got Ravenel and Hayden Stone back there. I mean, that's a pretty darn good 1, 2, 3 in the bullpen, and Fulmer is really taken to starting. I mean, Fulmer is just an elite talent. I'm actually kind of excited to get a chance to see him start in the SEC tournament in a couple of weeks in person because, he was electric the couple of short looks I got at him in Knoxville out of the bullpen. I'm curious to see how he holds his stuff. It sounds like he holds it because he's just a really strong, compact dude. Beede last night.
Well, he said why. He said why last night, Aaron. It's because he's a long toss freak.
Long tosser. Yep.
He talked about it on the broadcast that he's a long tosser, so he's clearly strong-bodied, great arm. Long tosses like crazy to maintain that arm, and that's why he's able to throw with a lot of effort, but keep his velocity deep into games because he trains to do that. So kudos to Carson Fulmer. So Carson Fulmer can throw strikes there. Ravenel struggled last night, but most of the Vanderbilt staff throws strikes with quality stuff. Tyler Beede does not, and I do not ever get a consistent good answer of why he doesn't, Aaron. What do you think, and what have you heard from the scouts you've talked to over the last 3 years of why Tyler Beede struggles and why he struggled last night?
Well, I'm sure there are some mechanical explanations, and we should preface this conversation by saying, we're talking about how much he struggled, and I think he still went 6 innings and gave up 1 run and couple of hits.
Right.
He walked 6, and it's like Kyle Peterson, I think, said last time on the broadcast. If you're sitting there with a first-round pick looking to give a guy $2 million, you're gonna wonder what's up with the history of walks that this guy has now. And he's good enough to pitch out of trouble often. Not always. He's had his games this year where he's struggled. And to me, the big thing is that he just doesn't have elite fastball command. For what I don't know what the reason is. I mean, I'm sure there's theories out there, but some guys are just naturally better able to command the fastball than others. I mean, maybe that's something that can be improved with some kind of mechanical tweak. I don't know. I'm not a pitching guru, but to me, the other thing is that he doesn't really throw the curveball for strikes very often. He can bury it and get a lot of swing and misses. You noticed that last night against left-handed hitters, he would back foot that thing, kind of bounce it in the dirt, against those guys, and that worked pretty effectively for him. And of course, his changeup I think that's his best pitch. I love the changeup. I mean, that thing is probably the one that he commands the best out of the three, and he can get swing and misses with that as well. That's a great pitch. No doubt the ingredients are all there. I mean, you see that the break on that curveball, it's hard and it's down and it's power, but I'd like to see him land it for a strike when he needs to, and that's something I don't feel like you see too often from him.
I agree, and I think you made a great point. Let's not bury the kid. Yeah, I just think that his walk rate is down from last year, Aaron. Last year was like 5.5, and he was SEC Pitcher of the Year. He, like Carlos Rodon, hasn't gotten great run support this year, so the win-loss record is not as gaudy. But for Beatty, the thing is that his strikeout rate is down, and he's just under more scrutiny because it's a draft year. So those things are, and if he can't live with the scrutiny, I'm not saying he can't, but the scrutiny is going to be a lot greater once he becomes a first-round pick, and if he ever gets to the major league. So, but you're right. He gave up one run last night to what looks like the best team in the Southeastern Conference, Florida, and Logan Shore is a big reason for that. He was the opposite of Tyler Beatty last night. He was efficient, and he commanded the strike zone with his fastball to both sides in all quadrants. Aaron, a couple other draft notes. Jeff Hoffman's Tommy John surgery, which will happen on Monday. He's out for the year. Brandon Finnegan has missed his last start, scheduled to start again this weekend for TCU. Now we have Eric Fetty, pitching coach Stan Stolte, UNLV. He didn't pitch last weekend. Coach Stolte says that he most likely will not pitch this weekend for the Rebels again. It's college starting pitchers, Aaron, are kind of falling like flies, dropping like flies. It sounds like, but at the same time, what's your sense? Do you think these guys are still going to be top half of the first-round draft picks? Have any of those three pitchers built enough track record in your mind to be top half of the first-round draft picks?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think all three of those guys could be, and yes, the issue now with the health situation with all these guys, it does complicate matters. But if it weren't for that, they'd be slam dunk first half of the first rounders, and maybe they'd all be top 10 picks. I still think Hoffman. Hey, that's the biggest wild card. Obviously, he's having Tommy John surgery, but I mean, to me, it's a little bit like the Giolito situation a couple years ago, where, not like Giolito at that point they didn't know for sure that he needed Tommy John surgery, but I think the writing was on the wall.
Right.
The Nationals gambled on that guy. They knew they'd have to pay him. He had a track record of big time stuff. Now, Giolito's stuff to me was always more explosive than even Hoffman's stuff was, and Hoffman's stuff was tantalizing, seductive even. But
that's gonna be the word for the rest of the year.
but Giolito's was just another notch up. I mean, 96 to 100 or versus 93 to 97. Something like that. I mean, it's just an extra grade up. But so maybe he's not quite Giolito. But he's got a chance to be a top end starter. There's no doubt about it. Everyone's seen the stuff. He's seen it in the Cape. He's seen it in the spring. He flashed it. Maybe it wasn't consistent performance-wise. Somebody's going to take this guy and give him a lot of money and probably get a pretty good steal, I would think. The other two guys, we'll see. The next couple of weeks will really matter a lot. But all these guys do have track record, and one other this brings up something else I want to bring up, John. Since we're talking about pitcher injuries, and the pitch count thing has been, once again, as it seems like every year about this time of year, it's been a hot topic of debate on the internet and on Twitter, and so I want to backtrack to something you said about Florida and Logan Shore last night. To me, it was so telling that what was it, the seventh inning, he hit 100 pitches, and it's like clockwork. He was cruising along. But I think he had one base runner at the time, and they came out and they got him. And he was pissed about it. He didn't want to come out of the game. He's a competitor, like all these guys are. But that coaching staff has a history. They don't have. You look back over the last 5 years, very few complete games, very few. Um, and most of their guys have stayed healthy. A lot of them got into the big leagues. Now, it's pitching. It's an inexact science. I mean, Carson Whitson was handled with kid gloves, and he still got hurt. So, on the one hand, I think it's hard to draw a straight line from pitch counts in college baseball to injuries. But on the other hand, give Florida a hand, because they're one of those programs. So many college coaches get raked over the coals on the internet and by scouts. This is a program that does it right and does everything it can to keep its players healthy. And hey, that doesn't mean they're all going to stay healthy, but they minimize risk as much as you possibly can with pitchers. And I think they deserve extra attention for that, because it is. I mean, the degree to which they're careful is uncommon. I will say that.
I completely agree. We wrote about that a couple of years ago. I guess it was in 2011, and I wrote that column about how even all the teams that you think of as kind of darlings, or teams that I sense are really respected by the pro community, had hickeys. Whether it was in 2011 at that time, it was Matt Harvey's juice by North Carolina that attracted attention and that I was hearing about from scouts. That year for Vanderbilt, it was Sonny Gray's usage in the College World Series, or the fact that the aforementioned Navery Moore had been their saves leader, and then he got buried in the College World Series in the postseason, and they went Kevin Zomek, and then I forget who the other closer was for them at that time of year, who the other trusted bullpen guy was in 2011, but it wasn't Navery Moore anymore. Then you had UCLA that year with Trevor Bauer. I think everyone in the industry respects John Savage, but Trevor Bauer was used as much or more in terms of pitch counts than Carlos Rodon. And I wrote at that time that Florida was the one that you didn't hear any dings about, and that we'd watch Karsten Whitson going forward. And Karsten Whitson has declined, and he had injuries, but he was handled, as you said, very carefully. Maybe he was even handled too carefully. We just don't know. We don't know there's direct causation of high pitch counts, because the study that the American Sports Medicine Institute did, ASMI, was on like 12 to 15-year-olds. It wasn't studying college baseball pitchers. So that study is what's usually cited for pitcher abuse, and that study was of teens and preteens, not college pitchers. And Jeff Hoffman's another guy who was used very carefully, never threw more than 120 pitches in an outing. I think he only had 6 outings. I have the game by game on my other laptop. I think he only had 6 games, Aaron, where he was over 100 pitches, and he has Tommy John surgery now. He has just talking to a scout today. There's a issue in his delivery. So for some people, it really wasn't a surprise. He got a little upside down, I guess, in the back from time to time, and that was cited as a reason that he was going to quote unquote blow out. But it's just not an exact science. So I think A, that point needs to be made, and I think B, certainly you'd rather a guy average 105 pitches than 115 or 120. And I think Florida is very cognizant of that, and they do deserve credit for being, I think, quite careful with their pitchers. And I think you would say responsible, and at the same time, Aaron, they win. So you have to give them credit. That's always my biggest issue, is a lot of times when these pitchers are overused, whether it's short rest, like last year with Ken Emanuel, or whether it's high pitch counts, it's not always effective. I always go back, for every time there's a John Hudgens, where the guy pitched great on short rest in Omaha in 2003, then you have Kent Emanuel, who last year on short rest was ineffective in the regional, and then ineffective for the most part thereafter. So that's, to me, should be what dissuades college coaches from bringing pitchers back on short rest. I believe that more often than not, it is not effective, and that a fresh pitcher is usually better than an exhausted pitcher. But that's what bothers me about it. I just don't think it's effective, not to mention what it does for their future.
And I think college coaches do have a responsibility to develop depth over the course of a season. That to me, and I understand it's hard to build depth. You have restricted scholarships. You're going to have some good arms. You're going to have some arms that are less good. But this is college baseball in the BB Core era. It's not that hard to develop strike throwers who can, 83, 85 and get ground ball outs. I mean, you see too many times in March and February, a number 1 starter goes out there with an 8-run lead, and that's another thing. If I'm not going to go down. I'm not going to criticize any more programs. We've everyone knows the guys who do this stuff. But if you got an 8-run lead in March with your ace and he's up over 100 pitches, take him out of the game. Throw somebody else in there. Build depth. All right, Ken Emanuel. I mean, in that case, He did that a lot last year. There were plenty of games. Why the heck is this guy in the game in the ninth? Save some bullets. If you want to build depth in the postseason, build depth in the regular season. I mean, then you don't have to maybe bring your aces back on short rest. I see a lot of programs do that. They ride their aces early rather than taking the opportunity to build depth, give guys experience, develop your pitchers. I want to see more of that.
I agree with you. Nothing else. So like you said, that's an easy one that's at the front of our minds, and it was obviously in close proximity to us. Couple other things, Aaron, and I'll let you go. This has become a long Google Hangout, longer than our usual Hangouts. This weekend, a couple of series in these mid-major leagues. Maybe they're one-bid leagues, Aaron. It looks like it's a one-bid league, probably in the Missouri Valley, even though it's a good year in the Missouri Valley. Do you feel like your latest stock report, I believe, had the Missouri Valley as a one-bid league?
No.
Is there any chance that the winner of this conference gets? Oh, I'm sorry, it's a multi-bid league.
Yeah.
But just winning the regular season, do you think that's going to really matter between Illinois State this weekend and Evansville? Does it matter who wins the regular season there for their at-large chances?
I think so. I think it does. And I forget which coach it was I was talking to this weekend. It was Wes Carroll at Evansville, or if it was Mark Kingston at Illinois State. But one of them said, it was like a couple of years ago when the Missouri Valley had a pretty good year, and I think they sent 3 teams to regionals that year, and Indiana State won the regular season and then went 0-2 in the conference tournament. But they still got an at-large bid, partly because they had that feather in their cap, the regular season championship. I think that really provides a big boost. So if you have a borderline RPI, but you're in a multi-bid league and you win your regular season championship, I do think it matters. So these teams are probably both going to have borderline RPIs. They both didn't have great weeks last week. I felt like they were both on track to get at-larges, and then they both kind of stubbed their toes last week. So, hey, one of these teams could win the conference tournament and still not get in if they wound up 60 in the RPI. I mean, if you're 60 in the RPI, you're not getting in, period. But if they're 52 and they have a conference championship in the regular season, then maybe you got a chance.
Yeah, Evansville they lost midweek to Belmont and dropped 10 spots in the or was that or was that Illinois State? One of them lost to Belmont and dropped 10 spots on a midweek
Evansville,
game.
Yeah.
That seems a little much for losing to Belmont. The other series that's out there, a couple of them that we profiled this weekend, the weekend preview. UC Irvine, Cal Poly, and that's a big one to me, Aaron, because Cal Poly's sliding a little bit, and I believe in the stock report you had them sliding out of. What is it? When does Cal Poly slide out of being a number 1 seed? Have they already done that? Can they get back in, and will they be a regional host?
Well, they're sitting here still at 39-9, and so I think they're still in position to host. I mean, the thing that hurts them, and I think we've talked about this before, might have been on the podcast that vanished into the ether, but a lot of the games that they played that looked good on paper in the beginning of the season, at the end of the season you look back and they don't get rewarded for them because Kansas State is in last place. They won the Big 12 last year. Now they're in last place, so sweeping those guys doesn't really help you. It doesn't give you top 50 wins. Taking a series against Cal and a series at UCLA, those teams aren't going to be in regionals. I don't think they're even in the top 100 right now. USC, they split a couple of games with early. Now USC, they had been rising and they took a step back last week. So I think right now they still technically only have one game against the top 50. So and that's not by design. I think they tried to put together a pretty darn good schedule. Those are all name brand programs, and a lot of those programs were good last year. I mean, heck, UCLA won the national championship. Kansas State won a regional, and it's unfortunate for Cal Poly that this year those programs haven't been as good, and injuries have been part of that too. But you can't always control your schedule, and I think Cal Poly, they've done a good job. I mean, they've been very consistent. They had one bad week all year. I think if they can win this series against Irvine, they're back kind of in good position to host. If they lose this series, Irvine kind of runs away with the Big West. It might be hard for Cal Poly to host, and then you're looking at maybe only 2 hosts in the entire West. I think Oregon and Washington. If Cal Poly falls back, maybe Irvine, if they can finish strong, maybe they can jump up and be that 3rd host. They could actually steal a host from Cal Poly. I think Irvine's up close to 30 in the RPI now. They still have series left against Fullerton and Long Beach, but right now, Irvine's the hottest team in that league. They might be the best team in that league. I mean, I still think it's Cal Poly, but if Cal Poly is wearing down, hey, Matt Imhoff and Reed Riley have been ridden hard the last couple of years. There could be some fatigue sitting in there. I talked to a scout who wondered that. We'll see more this weekend, I think. But this is a huge series in that conference. There's no doubt about it.
Trends on those two teams are going in opposite directions. Not like Poly's trend is straight down, but it had just been up all year. Every team has a bad weekend here or there. Their timing has been, I'd rather have it in the regular season than in the postseason, but they need to get well quickly, or else Irvine, which is, like you said, hottest team in that league, 14-1 in the league, Irvine could really jump up there and reverse that with them in terms of hosting a regional. Aaron, good stuff today, boy. Long podcast. We want to remind people to stick around at 3 o'clock. It's the Prospect Hot Sheet Chat with Vince Lara Sinisomo making his Prospect Hot Sheet Chat debut. And also in the 3 o'clock hour on MLB Network, you'll get to see J.J. Cooper as part of the rundown talking about the Prospect Hot Sheet. So May and June, Aaron, it's our time. So big time of year for Baseball America. Lots of ways to digest us. We hope you enjoyed this way on the Baseball America Google Plus Hangout. For Aaron, I'm John. You'll be able to see me tonight. More self-promotion if you have ESPN3 on the North Carolina-Florida State game. And then tomorrow night, I've got NC State and Wake Forest on ESPN3. So I'll see you there. If I don't see you then, we'll talk to you Monday on the next podcast. Until then, so long, everybody. Peace out.